Welcome. Welcome to our April Lead and Learn. We're so excited to have everyone here today. Take a moment while the last few people are coming in to answer the question on the slide. And if you've already done that, please scroll through and look at some of the habits that other people have adopted and see if there's any there that you would like to adopt for this, for your own habits. We hope that each of you is having a great spring morning. And I hope that at some point today, you get a chance to get outside and enjoy a little sunshine. And I think at this point, Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you so that you can go ahead and with the next part.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, APS. So I wanted to take the opportunity this morning to introduce our very own survivor. So if you could please advance.
Oh. Do you know what happened? I don't know what happened.
Here, I will, can I share my screen?
You want to share your screen?
Yep. Okay, looks like that may work. All right. So we are welcoming our very own survivor, Rico Munn, for really going above and beyond in his superintendency and emerging as the last superintendent that is standing among the Denver metro area. So just want to thank Rico for all of the work that he has done to usher us through this dynamic year and help us kind of kick off the last Lead and Learn for the 2020-2021 school year, our full Lead and Learn. So with that, I will turn it over to Rico, and hopefully you see I gave you a little bit of hair. I figured we both should have a new hairdo today. So welcome, Rico.
Well, that is disturbing at all kinds of levels. Well, Ashley, I guess you say thank you to that, but thank you so much for that introduction. Good morning. Good to see everyone. Glad to, yeah, actually, I have a couple here right after we're done. Glad to have you all here and glad to have a chance to connect with you this morning. I'm particularly enjoying Don Zapfel's background. That's nice. I like that one. Good to see everybody and have a chance to talk with you. And I always want to make sure that in these opportunities we have to connect, that I am very honest with you and straightforward about what's on my mind and what I'm thinking about. And so what I can tell you is I will spend most of today pretending to care about work. But what I can honestly tell all of you is it's the first day of the draft. And that's really all I care about. As we go through the weekend and as we see exciting prospects to come, let me just take a moment and talk to you Broncos fans. I know you could be facing difficult times. And I imagine for you that draft day is a lot like a Dostoevsky Christmas special, right? You walk into it, maybe you have high hopes, maybe you have dreams, and you keep thinking that, if I just keep moving forward, something good has to happen. Something positive must happen. But the reality is nothing positive will happen. Nothing good will come at the end of the day. And I want you to know that in your down and depressed moments, I'm here for you. You can reach out to me. I will not make you feel better, but I will be here for you. And so just have that solace and that comfort for those of you. For those of you who are fans of other teams who don't know how to draft, Packers fans, I hope you enjoy another defensive tackle. You know, Patriots fans, who knows what will happen in your dark moments, but you deserve them. So we shall enjoy the moment and enjoy the time. So good to connect with you and see all of you. Some of you have had more times to be out there and to connect than others. I'm thinking of Debbie McCammond. Debbie, where you at? For those of you who didn't see Debbie's star turn and on a magazine, she and the Early Beginnings program got featured, and we're so excited for the work that they're doing. Debbie, we'd love to hear from you. What's your job? For your first job is to turn off mute.
I know, I'm trying to sign in. My computer's having issues. So my job is to accelerate learning for every APS student every day. I do my job by showing and giving direction to others, moving people's heads and hearts and making a difference with a clear vision of purpose. My community needs me to do my job.
Good job. I had the chance to go visit Early Beginnings a couple of weeks ago and to see our little ones out there still engaging in learning, wearing their masks and still trying to figure out how to maneuver through their day. Debbie, what was the magazine you guys were featured in?
It's called The Exchange Magazine, and it's a leadership magazine for childcare providers. And so my 15 minutes of fame came and went pretty fast, but it was really fun to write that article. It kind of gave me the bug to keep writing. So look for more. There's more coming.
All right. Well,
and it was nice to get us on the map. So that's great. APS deserves that. We work hard for what we do.
Well, it's so great to see and so great to get a chance to feature all the great work that your team does over there. So, and thank you for having me out to come and check that out.
Well, thank you.
So as usual, I have a lot of things to go through for you to try and give you some information. My goal today, as always, is to put you in a position to, as best as I can, understand the work that we're doing, understand why we're moving through things and what some of the decisions to come are. I always somebody needs to go on mute. I always want to try and put you in a position that you can turn back to your staff and explain why decisions are being made, how decisions are being made, what some of the factors are. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll agree with every decision, but that you can be in a position to explain when people are wondering what's happening and how is that happening, that you can do that. And so that is my goal every time we talk, but in particular this morning. As you know, it's been a difficult year to think about planning and to think about structures, certainly at school levels, but also at the district level. And a lot of our plans are very much contingent upon the next round of health guidance, contingent upon the next set of rules from CDE or whatever the legislature does. And so I want you to be in a position to understand what some of the contingencies are, what some of the options are, and what are some of the key factors that will go into my decision making over the next few months as we really dig into next year. My next year is starting to really come into vision, and I want to share that with you. I'm going to do my best here to share my screen and see if we can make that happen. All right. Dr. McConnell, give me a thumbs up. Do you see my screen? All right, thank you. All right. This is a great picture. I know many of us are feeling that way and feeling a bit like the year is long and going on, particularly this time of year, but we are almost there. And so as we think about planning for 21-22, the way at the leadership team level we are currently structuring our planning process is we're really trying to identify what are the key operating assumptions that we have to build around, not the things that we necessarily want the world to be or want things to be, but just from an objective standpoint, what are the things that we can identify are facts that we can build around for next year? And certainly, I think there'll be opportunity at the end of this for you if you want to, look at some of those operating assumptions. If you want to challenge some of those, if you think we are missing some in our thinking and planning, please feel free. But here are some of those operating assumptions. Right now, based upon the numbers that we are getting from Kaiser Permanente and others, we project, and I project that, roughly 80% of our staff will be vaccinated by the end of this school year, fully vaccinated. That is a good number. Obviously, the higher the better. That could, swing anywhere from obviously probably at a low of in the low 70s up to the low 80s as far as our best estimate, but that is our best estimate right now. Based upon the fact that there's now a vaccine for 16-year-olds and up, and there's promising opportunities for 12 to 15-year-olds, my best estimate and assumption going into the next school year is about 30% of our kids will be vaccinated across the district. That's a complete swag, right? There's no way of really knowing that, but that is an estimate that we are operating off of, and we're trying to think around what that means. We expect there to be few to no accommodations from COVID-19. In fact, we expect that pretty much all of those will go away on May 15th. We have been a district that has had strict adherence to public health guidelines. And this is an incredibly important assumption because we are actually one of the few districts, particularly in the Tri-County area, that have had really strict adherence to public health guidance. That's the position we took from day one. If you recall, March 12th, 2020, when I met with all of you or most of you on a Zoom call at the start of this, I told you that we would have one true north. That would be the guidance of Tri-County Health, and that's what we followed since that day. And that strict adherence will play out in some of the work that we have coming forward. Based upon what Tri-County is telling us right now, we expect that next year there will be some level of PPE, some level of mask wearing in our facilities. Perhaps some expectation of distancing, although I expect that will be a fairly light touch. And at this point, it is our understanding, and what they have told us is that there will still be quarantine requirements going into next year. For those of you who have watched the news in the last day or so, you've seen that I'm actively working to try and change some of those quarantine recommendations and guidance because we don't believe that they continue to be of value given the high level of protocols and controls we have within our K-12 systems. However, if they are in place, we will follow them. And that's where we currently stand in the planning that we are following. And that quarantine assumption is really one of the key ones because it will drive a lot of the decision making that you'll see me talking about later on in this presentation. Right now, we are looking at 20 to 30% of students opting for some level of remote learning. And that is based upon the data that you have all seen from our slideshow or from our survey to families and trying to understand what that impact is. Some of our operational things, we expect before and after school care operating at normal capacity. And let me just pause for just a quick second and ask either Ashley or Jenny just to check me, but I'm looking at a participant list of 317, which seems very large for what we're talking about here. So give me a sense of who we're talking to in that.
Yes, I can give you that sense. Yes, so it's basically principals, APs, admin, TOSAs, teaching partners, ICs, and district level staff. Okay,
much bigger crowd than I thought. So that's cast of thousands who are going to be disappointed by the draft tonight. All right. Some of the other operating assumptions that we are looking to and thinking about is we expect our students and some of our staff will have enhanced social and emotional needs. And we have to be thinking about what that means and what that looks like across our different facilities. At this point, we are expecting and planning for transportation to be operating at normal capacity. It may involve some PPE, it may involve different cleaning protocols, but we're expecting buses to be at normal capacity going into next year. We do expect some level of higher mobility rates, both between schools and between models. When I say between schools, I mean, what we have seen is during the pandemic, there was some level of people doing their best to hunker down and not to make too many life changes. However, as things free up, we will, I think, expect to see some change in everything from rents and potential evictions across the community to different things happening to perhaps make people a little more mobile. And then also between learning models, as we talk about learning models here in just a minute. We do expect to return to our normal schedule, 5 days of in-person learning, our normal schedule at high schools, and then 5 full days at K through 8. We are now a one-to-one environment. That just kind of happened. And we don't expect to go back on that. Some of you I know are trying to operate at a 2-to-1, but at a base level, our assumption right now is that we'll be a 1-to-1 environment. As you likely know at this point, we will experience a significant influx of one-time dollars. The amount of that money and the impact of that is still a little unclear depending upon the work of the Colorado legislature here over the next couple of weeks, but we certainly know that there will be an influx of those one-time resources. The most important part of that phrase is one time, and that we understand and recognize and plan for that. And that also has an impact on some of the work that you'll see here in a few minutes. And we also expect and know that we will have ongoing blueprint work, that as we are kind of in the midst of this current phase, as we identify magnet opportunities, as we close out both Lindell and Century, we know that we'll be going into the next phase of this where we start to identify next regions to work through and impacts across the district. And so that will be an ongoing conversation, ongoing work that we have. So this is kind of the high level list of operating assumptions that we are actively talking about at the leadership team level, and that we're thinking about how that shapes next school year, and then obviously years to come, but really obviously how this impacts where we are in August. These operating assumptions then lead to a list of policy decisions, things that we have to either make key decisions about, or we have to draft new policies, or we have to make sure.
Good morning, thank you for sitting Blackback. How are you today?
Or we got to make sure we've got clear protocols about. I think number 320 forgot to mute their microphone. One of those policy decisions are whether or not we will require vaccinations for employees. All right, you saw across higher ed, that's was a very active conversation yesterday. That's a very active conversation in kind of the world around us. At this point where I stand, it is my intention to require vaccinations for employees at the beginning of next school year. We're still looking at that and evaluating the impact of that. That's particularly driven by the requirement of quarantines. What we are seeing is we have places and situations where some of our staff have made choices not to be vaccinated, which certainly is a choice that personally I can understand and respect to a certain degree. However, those choices may be causing some of our classes of kids to go home for 2 weeks when they have not actually been exposed. And so when adult choices are impacting educational opportunities for our kids, we have to think about that impact. Other reasons to think about making that requirement that are out there, obviously, is kind of our healthy and safety environments, the new variants that are coming up. And so that is something that I'm actively looking at, and that is my current intention. This is not a declaration today, but I want you to understand my current intention. You'll see more about that in the next couple of days. Vaccination for kids. You know, the reality is that is a very difficult nut to crack, particularly since as I stand here, we do not have a vaccine for K through 15 or through kids up till age 15. And so we'll keep looking at that, keep evaluating and looking at best practices from public health officials. But right now, still evaluating the impact of that. Whether or not we have external volunteers and visitors, or what the rules will be for those folks, is something we need to delve into. What our travel policy or travel position will be for all of next year. I know many of you are thinking about PD opportunities and trying to nail down whether or not arrangements should be made. We are still taking that one step at a time. Also for school trips, right? For senior trips, perhaps. To other places around the world. You know as well as I do, that's a very dicey conversation, and we're trying to sort through that and get to some clear positioning around that. Least favorite topic, snow protocols, right? Will we have snow days? Will we fully adopt the protocol that we put in place this year, or will we revert back to our old policy or do something different? Looking at that, CDE has recently changed its rules around contact days as far as what snow days are allowed and what remote days are allowed. And so we'll be evaluating the impact of that change on our school calendar and have some clear directions around that as we go into next year. We'll have to take a look at our attendance policies or our discipline policies as we have different environments to think about and different ways to interact with our kids. And that's so the same obviously was with online attendance and online student access to extracurricular activities. Operating in very different environments. I expect in that space, it'll look very much like what we do in our homeschool space and the option space, as far as letting kids have access to those extracurricular activities of what would be their traditional homeschool. But we need to flesh that out and think through what are the traps there. And admissions, how do we think about admissions as we are likely to have some types of remote environments into next year? Other key decisions are, what do we think about things like staff attendance and health leave policies? Are there changes we need to make there? Will we have continued COVID-19 testing? Is that something we should be building into our budget as we expect some of these state and nonprofit funding to go away for that? One of the things that we've had to keep thinking about are, as we look at new graduation requirements, what will that mean in our high school environments? How will that impact with some of our remote learning environments? And then the calendar. Do we go back to try and do a 2-year calendar or stay with a 1-year calendar, thinking that things are very still unsettled? Unclear at this point. So I know I'm leaving you with lots of questions around those policy decisions, but I know one of the questions that I often get from staff is, have you thought about? Are you looking at? And so I wanted to give you a sense of the things that we've clearly thought about, we're clearly looking at. Sometimes we have answers, sometimes we don't. And also invite you, as you look at this list, to think, please make sure that you are thinking about this operating assumption, or that you are giving clear guidance around this policy decision, so that you have an opportunity to add to that list and make sure that it's on my radar as we go into planning for next year. So thinking about next steps and about how we start communicating next steps, it's our current intention that in mid-May, about 2.5 weeks from now, that we come out to the community and really announce as clearly as we can, here's what next year will look like. Here is how you access learning opportunities for next year and what the plan is. Again, still making sure that our language indicates this is our intent, but our intent may change based upon learning new information or new health guidance or direction. We have been operating since April, roughly, under our recovery plan. And our recovery plan was built around 4 different benchmarks, 4 different pillars, I guess, and 1 set of essential expectations. We want to formally close that out at the end of this school year, report back on those expectations, report back on our lessons learned, as we then say, okay, that part is over. And now as we go into our new school year, here's who we are and what we'll look like. And then likely, and I'm sorry, that shouldn't say June, that should say August, that we will kind of formalize our resilience and recovery plan and lay that out. There's obviously pieces that will be put in place as we go into our budget process this year, as we talk about everything from summer school to how we will allocate certain recovery dollars. But we want to get that finalized and kind of fully rolled out to the community in the August timeframe. So let me talk about now learning models for next year. And when I talk about learning models, this goes back to the conversation that we started really back in November. I laid out for you my thinking around our planning, around the idea that there may be no vaccine, or that there would be an early vaccine or a late vaccine, and how the dynamics of if and when there are a vaccine played out into our community and the kinds of learners that created. So we've been actively trying to think about how to plan for and think about learning models going back to the winter. When we now have a clearer picture, obviously, around the vaccine story, there are still some open questions which drive other things. What we, of course, can never really know is how that will drive the behavior of our families. And we've done our best to try and get an indicator of that. through the survey that we sent out a month or so ago. Most of you have seen this data, but just to recap for you, we got about 9,000 respondents, kind of equally distributed across our different levels. And our respondents generally told us, look, if we were to offer these three options, here's how they would break down. 9,000, of course, is a sample. And so we're going to extrapolate from that sample and try and get our best understanding from that and from some of the responses that people gave us around what strengths and weaknesses were. But this is helping to inform, obviously, our operating assumptions and our thinking about next year. So as you can see, the overwhelming majority of our families want to be back in person, expect to be back in person, but a significant number of our families want some kind of remote or online option. And it's particularly significant because if you step back and think about this, going back to February of 2020, at the elementary level, for example, that number was roughly 0 for fully remote or flexible, right? So from 0 to 23% who now have that experience and say they are looking for that experience going into next year. At the middle school level, at our pure traditional middle schools, you can see there's a shift in those numbers. There's a much higher interest in that remote option. And part of that we think is also about people, again, not having a full understanding of what that might look like, or not understanding what our in-person options may look like. We know a lot of our middle school students were not enamored with our middle school opportunities to be in their classes but still be online, and opted to go back home. And so it may take some more education and understanding around how to go through those. As I look at the East Middle School mascot, how we have not been sued is still beyond me. And then at our K-8s, you can see those numbers there. And then finally at the high school level. So you see a definite trend where at the elementary level, there's a much higher intention to return in person. As you go up in age, the shift to the online or remote environment is much more significant. That is not particularly surprising. As some of our secondary students, some of them enjoyed the remote environment. Some of them were already in a remote environment through avenues or through other mechanisms. And some of them, found other ways to engage in the world around them, took on jobs or started supporting siblings or other things, and are interested in maintaining that approach to learning and that approach to education. So very much an indicator of where people are, but this is a snapshot in March of this year. As you know, that is years ago in COVID time. And as the news changes, as information changes, we expect that to shift. But we are trying to build around an understanding that a significant number, but not an overwhelming number of our families want to stay in a remote environment. And so that drives these decisions around learning models. We expect to have, again, obviously a fully in-person learning 5 days a week at all of our schools. We expect full classrooms in that. We expect to have a fully remote option. We will have a new online K-8 option, and then we'll be expanding the capacity of avenues to serve our high school students as that online option. And then thirdly, at this point, we are planning for what we've called that flex option to operate during the first semester. That will operate for our elementary schools and K-8s. It is largely a response to the potential for ongoing quarantines. But it is a family choice option where families can choose into that for the first semester, but maybe opting in and out during those first 2 quarters. It will be a hybrid teaching model, but it will be limited in time and scope as compared to this year, meaning that it will look very different than the hybrid that we've been doing or the dual teaching that we've been doing, but it will still be a hybrid learning model as we go into next year. And when I talk about quarantines, what's one of the important things to remember is that if we are required to maintain quarantines at essentially the rules that we have now, which is what we've been told we will be into the first semester. At present, we are averaging roughly 10 schools a day and putting out about 75 kids every day. And that's on the average. We've had a high up to close to 300 kids in one day, and 15, 16 schools. We've had obviously lows on the other end. If that's the case, if that is our norm, we need to plan and structure ourselves for that norm. It is not an exception. It's the norm, and so we need to have in place a structure that can deal with that norm. If quarantine rules change, we will kind of reevaluate what our structure should be. But right now, this is what we've been told to expect and plan for. So let me talk a little bit more about those last two, fully remote and flex. You obviously understand the in-person environment. When I talk about the remote option, what you know is that historically we have not provided a K-8 remote option. It has not been something that we have favored, that I have favored as a strong learning environment for our community. But the reality is that for many years, there's been that interest in our community. We have several multi-district online schools that have operated within APS going back 10, 15 years, which have enrolled hundreds of our kids, of Aurora community kids in those schools. We simply said, look, we are not going to provide that option. We're not interested in providing that learning opportunity. However, obviously during the pandemic, we had to get into that business, and that we also theorized that now that many of our families have actually experienced it, there may be an increase in that interest. So an increase on top of what already existed in the community. But we know that the endurance of that interest is very unclear. Will that go away in the middle of next year? Will that completely dissipate to where we think again about whether or not we do that? It's just unclear to us at this point. CDE at this point has granted across the state temporary waivers from the traditional online rules. What the traditional rules say is that if you have more than 99 kids enrolled in an online program, you then have to open a fully independent online school. And so they have waived that cap for next year so that we and other districts can still try to understand what's the interest in our community. So the online program we are standing up will not be a standalone school. It will be a program. The impact of that is twofold. One, students who are in the online program will still be officially enrolled in their home neighborhood school. But what that also means is that while they will be learning in that remote option, for accountability purposes, they will be counted in their home neighborhood school. And so understand that distinction. There will be a host of kids who are on your rolls who you will not have a connection to, but they will count in all the things that we obviously look at from a standpoint of accountability. But the reality of that is that we need to stand up and fund what we're going to think about as a pilot remote option for our community. We'll be looking at it next year. We'll be looking at what the real numbers are, evaluating the strength of that programmatic offering for our students and families, and trying to understand whether or not that's something that come January, February of next year, we apply for permanent status or not. At this point, it's unclear, but we'll go through that process. But it's important that we understand the need to stand that up and the need to fund that. And so we've gone through multiple budget scenarios to think about how we fund that. And we started with what we thought were kind of a high, low, and middle assumption around what the size of that may be. And we settled on looking at different structures and how that would impact our overall budget. You can see what that high number looks like, what the middle number looks like, and kind of what that low number look like. Based upon our best operating assumption, based upon our summaries, I'll get to kind of where we are settled in that. But what we know is that the creation of an online program in that structure, be it for
Will you turn yours a little bit up?
short-term or long-term, is going to have a significant impact on our overall budgets. We are a district that has been declining in enrollment for a number of years. We expect that trend will start to turn around, particularly with the new developments east of E470. But for a host of our schools, that is still our reality. We have projected next year, as you know, that our enrollment will decline by 3%. And we'll have to see how that plays out, obviously, but that is our current projection. What we know is that if the interest in remote learning continues, it will have a significant impact on our traditional neighborhood schools on their budgets, because obviously those students come from somewhere and the dollars will follow them. And also online students are funded at a different rate than full in-person students. And so that overall could have a significant impact long-term over the overall district budget, individual school budgets. And we are very, very cognizant of that in our planning and thinking about that. And also the reality is, even as we start to see enrollment increases east of E470, because of the averaging that the School Finance Act is built around, it is still a 5-year impact from any enrollment decline. So even as we start to increase, we'll still see that impact from declining enrollment. It's not just a year-to-year thing. So as we think about how we fund, those different options around online learning, we really have two broad options there. One is to fully fund that from building allocations, right? We could look at where those students come from, each individual school, and then allocate the PPOR away from those buildings to the online program. The concern there obviously is that in a 1-year way of working could quickly destabilize a whole number of our schools with a big impact. And that destabilization could also then decrease some of the interest in in-person learning, which becomes then a self-fulfilling prophecy around what we see in in-person learning. The other option is to take some of those significant one-time dollars from ESSER, or ESSER 3 as we currently call it, and fully fund that online program from there. The challenge there is that if that online interest endures, we create a significant budget cliff by pouring just one-time dollars into that and not accounting for that. And that budget cliff over time, and we're talking not a long time, we're talking 2 years down the road, would have an even larger impact for schools, because schools may experience both the impact of declining enrollment and then also the impact of that big shift at one time of dollars from remote students. Those either way are not great options and not great ways to deal with it. Right now, rough math, I would estimate the size of that budget cliff could potentially be up to $40 million if we went that direction. For those of you who were here in 15, 16, 16, 17 school year, we experienced a significant budget cliff from the rapid decline in enrollment. That was to the tune of $31 million. So just so you have a sense of scale and impact in what we were trying to mitigate against. You can see there in bold that given the uncertain nature of what that long-term enrollment will be, we wanted to try and craft something which balanced both of those two risks, both of those two things in some way moving forward. So to do that, we are going to largely fund that with one-time dollars. However, we are going to reduce school budget allocations by 1%. This is not a holdback. This is a true. We're going to take back 1% from what we have currently allocated to your school budgets, so that we can start to see that structural shift from the remote students from our neighborhood schools to that remote program to fund that. That 1% only funds roughly 20% of what we are using as that high estimate, that $11 million for the remote learning program. And we do expect that that 1% will be, the blow will be softened, because the allocations that we're going to be sending out to you from ESSER 3, we project will exceed that reduction. So at your bottom line, I don't know that you will necessarily feel that. However, structurally, you will not need to start thinking about and looking at your budget and recognizing that some portion of your budget now is much more one-time than it is ongoing dollars. And so you need to start structuring and thinking about your budgets in a different way as well to help mitigate against some of that cliff effect. Okay. So that is some of the remote option and what that looks like. The staffing of that is underway, and the structuring of that is underway. We will be using the creation of these remote learning centers to help support our students in that process. And as I said, evaluating whether or not we need to be or should be in that business long term at the K-8 level. We'll obviously continue at the high school level, but at the K-8 level, it's very much an open question, but clearly something we need to provide into next year. Going into the flex option. I know this is an option that is much beloved by many of you, but I want you to understand some of the whys as to how we are thinking about this. Again, we need to understand the high level of quarantines that we have been experiencing and at this point anticipate experiencing. On a daily basis, we have kids transitioning in and out of our buildings all across the district. And this year, we handled that by obviously those kids going onto a remote option into that hybrid space. Thinking about next year, since we will have a fully remote option, all those kids who are in that space who are currently hybrid in your classrooms will be gone, right? They will not be part of that population on a daily basis. And so as we think about where kids go when they're in quarantine, if we send them out of your classrooms into the fully remote option, they essentially will be sent to a whole new school for 10 days and 2 weeks. We don't see that as a healthy learning environment for our kids on a regular basis to be sent to a different school. Another option is for them to go home and learn asynchronously. Again, not the healthiest learning environment. And so it seems likely that any kids on quarantine, the best learning environment is to be in that hybrid. But given the frequency that we're seeing that in, we believe that we're better structured to have a regular structure that they can move in and out of seamlessly where that's existing. We also see this as a temporary option for some of our families who may be vaccine hesitant or otherwise health concerned about coming back to our fully in person. A way of making sure that they connect to their new teacher and classmates so that they are starting to see, I want to be in that building, I want to be with that student, that we have a clear connection and avenue to entice them back into our structures and that we can ease them back in by having this as an option for them for first semester. Giving them that hard choice come second semester if they're still hesitant. And so what we obviously hope to see is that those families who choice into it diminishes over time quickly in those first and second quarters. We also see this, not quite frankly, I also see this as to some degree a pilot opportunity. In the long term, having some kind of flex structure may mitigate against all the budget impacts you saw before of a remote learning option going forward. And I think you'll see a lot of this conversation into next year as CDE starts to put back in place its remote rules and the laws around remote learners. Because schools and districts won't be able to have these kind of in-building fully remote options because they quickly will become programs that have to become standalone schools, which means that they will need to create structures to avoid those students being designated as remote and instead being designated as part of that in-person school. And likely some type of flex, I think, is certainly something people will have to be thinking about. And so this also gives us an opportunity to see if that is a model that will work for us. Again, this way of doing hybrid will be very different than what we've been doing this year because a whole section of our students, the remote ones, will be gone. They'll be in that remote program and we'll have a much smaller population of kids who are steadily in that as opposed to the constantly changing options that we had there. I know there's a breakout session later today with Andre. Who'll talk more with you about exactly how we structure this, how we staff this, and what that looks like. But this is our current intention and current planning. All right, I believe the last thing I wanted to go through with you before I open up to questions is talk about our resiliency and recovery plan, which again is our long-term plan using one-time dollars to address the impacts of the pandemic. And when I think about our theory of action or work underneath this, that phrase at the top is what I focus on, that we really want to use this plan to close the opportunity and resource divides created or exacerbated by the COVID-19 global pandemic by using these one-time resources in a way that builds sustainable capacity to implement our plan, meet our results, and fulfill our mission. This plan is not meant to replace our strategic plan. This plan is not meant to replace our long-term goals, but it is meant to focus us around how we utilize significant one-time dollars to address the impacts of COVID. We are thinking of this in terms of three buckets. First is the learning loss bucket, second is infrastructure, and third is system support. Learning loss is where you've spent a lot of your time thinking about, obviously, and the goal there, we're talking about 5 years of progress in 3 years. And we are working to identify what those tiered supports may look like and how to allocate dollars across the district and also to buildings to support that. In the infrastructure space, a lot of those one-time dollars are well spent on pure brick and mortar kinds of things or technology things, and we're actively looking at how we might build around that. And you see some of the things that down at the bottom that are kind of clear ideas at top of mind right now. There's also much talk at the federal level, and some of you saw the president's speech last night around an infrastructure bill. If that passes, there may be significant amounts of additional one-time dollars that are really focused in that middle tier right now. And we're doing our best with everybody else to understand what that opportunity looks like for us. The third bucket is really the one that we try to think about sustainability. How do we put in place other system supports to address those things? So in that bucket, we're thinking about things like long-term pipeline programs to continue to bring in a talented, diverse staff into all of our buildings. Also thinking about what some of the more extended learning opportunity partnerships could be around summers and around other extended learning opportunities. And there's a list of other things in that bucket, but just to give you a sense of what we're trying to build out and work across the system. Oh, I was wrong. We have one more thing. And obviously, this is ongoing in all of our discussions, but our COVID-19 protocols and updates. We continue to await updated guidance from CDPHE and Tri-County on quarantines and contact tracing. We are now on our, I believe, 9th day of them saying it will come out tomorrow. And so we continue to see where we are with that. However, even as we are moving to clear on May 15th, we want to make sure that we thank you and appreciate all you're doing to have very strong protocols. The protocols that we have in place are what are allowing us to continue to move forward and make moves and to think about what we can do. We're really excited at the opportunity to have some vaccination clinics for our APS students and families. One of the Rangeview student clubs worked with the state to get a vaccination clinic at the Rangeview site. That's going to be on Saturday, I believe, on May Day. And then we have another clinic on May 7th at Hinckley. If you have not gotten the word out, high school principals, please get the word out to your students and families. We want to make sure that we have a strong showing and that kids show up so that we no vaccines go to waste and that we can really get back to really building strong and healthy environments. With that, I want to make sure that you take some time to take care of yourself. You know, please feel free to cry into your draft card tonight, Broncos fans. Larry, I see you wearing your shirt. Feel free to, you know, take some emotional healing time around that if you need. But really, please take time for you and your family. Next week, as we talk about Teacher Appreciation and Nurse Appreciation Week, we're going to be rolling out some other ways that we want to support you in having really strong healthcare practices. But it's so important that we really take time to take care of one another and take care of yourselves. With that, I am open to your questions or to your thoughts around our assumptions, our policy decisions, or whatever else I can share with you at this point in time. Patty, can you facilitate that for me?
Yes, sure can. So we have a question about, is the 1% budget reduction for all schools or just K-8? When will we see the one-time ESSER funds in our budget?
Yes, for all schools, for the whole family, across the board reduction. And that the ESSER dollars won't hit your budgets for a while. We are still waiting to see how the legislature may impact any PPOR dollars or the budget stabilization factor, so that we have a true sense of what those dollars are. And so it'll be a while still before they hit your budgets.
All right, the questions are coming in fast and furiously. We'll try to stay on top of them. Is there any consideration for the online remote option to be extended to students with disabilities, specifically students with more significant impact?
And I will let kind of Andre and Rachel walk through some of those details with the folks working in that space. But we certainly will follow everything under IDEA and FAPE to make sure that we provide the appropriate spaces for all of our students. But I'm not going to try to get into those technical details. I'll leave that to the experts.
A question about what guidelines will be in place around how ESSER funds will be allocated.
Well, I mean, there's the federal guidelines, obviously, which we're all trying to understand to go through that guidance. Right now, our thinking at the district level of how we'll do that is identifying students based upon tiers of need, kind of tiers 1, 2, and 3, and then allocating based upon a per pupil basis for students in that highest tier. The question is, what's the amount of money per student that we would allocate? And we've been fluctuating based upon some of the federal guidance, because even though we're allocating dollars, you need to be very clear that there will be significant controls around those dollars based upon federal guidance. Most expenditures of those dollars will require RFPs. Most of those expenditures will have to come from certain likely approved programs or lists. And so it won't be just, that you've completed autonomy to do that. We will have to work very closely with Amy Baruin and others to really make sure that we are appropriately utilizing those dollars, because I'm not going to jail over this. Patty might, but I'm not.
No one is going to jail. All right. Can you speak more, Rigo, about what accountability measures will remain at the homeschool for remote students and why accountability will not be shifted to the remote program?
Yeah, because it's a program and not a school. And CD has made it very clear that whatever the homeschool is owns the students' accountability measures. And so everything about the accountability measures will stay with that homeschool.
All right, what about, are there other budget impacts that we should expect other than what was shared today?
No, so Brett did a budget update for the board last week. I suggest you go take a look at that. I don't expect any other large budget impacts. We are, largely speaking, in a solid place from our budget standpoint because of how we have managed things through our restructuring, but also because of the good fortune of our mill levy passage. We are in a fairly solid place. What we're dealing with right now is not a problem with the budget, but it's a shift in how students are expected to learn next year, and how do we support that structure.
All right, what about remote work policy in place for next school year? And will we still be required to offer staff ADA accommodation?
So let me try and talk about this in terms of buckets. So we have a set of accommodations that I refer to as COVID accommodations that really came as a result of the governor's executive order and other things saying during the period of COVID, remote work is encouraged, and if a person is vulnerable, then remote work is essentially required. All of those COVID accommodations go away May 15th. The executive orders go away, all those things, unless something changes between now and May 15th. That is what we've been told by the state. That's what the governor said. That's what public health has said. May 15th, all COVID accommodations go away. And now the ADA is a different deal. Obviously, ADA is federal law. If somebody has a basis to apply for an ADA accommodation, they may do so through HR, through that process that's been in place, forever, and go through. But those will not be the COVID accommodations. As far as a remote work policy, we do not have one. We've certainly talked about whether or not we need to create one, depending upon things like spacing requirements or whether or not we need certain infrastructure changes to deal with certain new rules or structures. And we're looking into that possibility, but nothing exists as of yet, but certainly something we're actively talking about and looking at.
We have a question about, is there going to be another survey to high school parents specifically about remote, in-person, night school, and then also clear communication that there's not a flex option at high school? And
So part of what we are going to be sending out in May is, again, that communication around what next year looks like. And we're going to do our best to not make that a pamphlet, but there's obviously a lot to communicate. So Patty's team will be working. How do we best do that? Do we provide some links that are different for different levels or some follow-up things? But we definitely want to make sure we clearly communicate what is available, what's available to who, and then also try and have structures to clearly identify real numbers. And so part of that will be, when do we open admissions windows? How do we do that? And we're still working through those processes.
we have a question about, on a given week, how many active quarantines are happening on average across the district, trying to get a sense of the scope for the flex option.
Again, I mean, the rough average that I was saying is about 10 schools per day, about 75 kids per day. So somebody else can do the math. But we are seeing an active number of quarantines under the current existing guidelines and our adherence to those guidelines.
All right, Kelsey and Jojo, we're thinking along the same line, so I'm just going to sort of combine these questions. Are there going to be tight guidelines for flex? For example, you can't be remote on days where the roads are bad or you wake up late, and same thing, like what's the criteria for families to opt into flex?
Yeah, it will not be an option that's just a daily option for families, right? It will be a clear enrollment option. This is how the model that I'm choosing to learn under. One of the policy options which we identified was about attendance that we pointed out, and we have to get very clear around what does it mean to be sick? If I'm sick, am I just out, right? Versus am I quarantined, or those kinds of things. So it'll be, we have to get very clear around that in our policies and our structures, and then enforce that on a consistent basis.
A question about substitutes. Getting subs has been a challenge through Kelly Services. Classroom monitors have done a great job covering classrooms. So if we're going to continue following quarantine protocols, are we considering bringing classroom monitors back?
We're certainly considering bringing classroom monitors back and looking at that impact. I will tell you just anecdotally, we have done much better in our sub coverage than most of our colleagues around the metro area. So I don't want to confuse kind of a COVID problem with a Kelly problem. We have fared much better than a lot of folks around the metro area through that mechanism, but it's been difficult. We also are going to work with Kelly to make sure that their subs are committed and clear around what the expectation is for this year. They were part of our vaccination pool, and so they should be ready to stand up and be part of the team next year.
All right, just two more questions. If a student chooses to be in person, can the family change to flex in the middle of the quarter, or will they have to stay in person until the start of the next quarter?
Yeah, I'm going to leave some of those kind of detailed things for Andre's breakout session to go through some of those really kind of logistical pieces.
All right, last question. You mentioned a need to educate families on what a full remote or flex option would look like. When's this taking place? What will it look like? Maybe a video or a slide deck like today?
Yeah, I think, again, that's part of what we want to launch this communication in mid-May, saying here's what next year looks like. We've actively talked about, perhaps doing some videos around all those options. Here's what, our in-person environments look like, and they'll be, bright, happy, and cheerful. And here's what remote options look like, and that'll be, doom and gloom music and, like the Munsters in the background kind of thing. But there will definitely be a push to let families know, look, we have these different environments. We want all of them to be appropriate learning environments, but our preference, and we believe that your student is better off in person, but we will try to educate families around those options. Maria, I'm sure you'll have a lovely, welcoming environment. We just want as few people as possible there.
On that note, Jojo appreciates the push for in person. I think those are all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much, Rico, for all the valuable information and for providing us with like the current and future context. I know we all appreciate knowing where we're going as a district and what our next steps are. So thank you so much for that. With that, I'm gonna take a minute to share my screen, and we are going to move on to celebrating our hard hat leaders. So we have two leaders who've had the hard hat for a little while, and we can start with Kelly, if you don't mind. Just passing.
So good morning, everyone. I'm excited to celebrate one of our leaders today. I think oftentimes it can be easy to notice leaders with big personalities, but we also need all types of leaders. So today I'm going to recognize one of our quiet but strong leaders. This person was someone that was very supportive to me as we both experienced being an interim principal and transitioning into a principal role at our schools. I've watched this leader gain his strength around his vision and stay true to what he envisions his school becoming. He has had a tremendous amount of disruption in his first few years, but he has calmly and methodically dealt with those issues. He has a strong vision in creating an environment where students utilize their strengths, and additionally, he continues to build the pathways for our students that they need to access a variety of careers after their schooling ends. So today I'm recognizing Jason Macklin. Some of our staff wanted to share some of his great accomplishments. One staff member said, "Jason is a gentle giant. His height may intimidate some, but once you talk to him, you will see that he's very kind and compassionate. I enjoy working with Jason because he listens and is very supportive of our music program. He is a man of integrity. He's thoughtful in his decision-making and very approachable and easy to talk to. Jason is great as an administrator, and I want to thank him." Another staff said, "It seems that ever since Jason Macklin arrived at Vista Peak, he has been faced with unique and unanticipated challenges, this year being no exception to that. And yet, in spite of those obstacles, he has remained consistent in his leadership and commitment to our Bison students. He has been passionate about bringing all kinds of mind work to our campus and continues to elevate our innovation with neuroscience and multiple modalities. He sees the value in our strong, diverse programs and pathways at Vista Peak Prep and continues to strive for that campus vision that elevates those opportunities for students." Another staff member said, "Jason Macklin is a visionary who seeks to support and develop educators and staff so that students are educated and cared for in such a way that they thrive. I appreciate Mr. Macklin's drive to be innovative, responsive, and nurturing to the entire VPP community. I know our students are in good hands underneath his leadership." One staff member said, "He represents integrity, empathy, and innovative thinking. He is grounded in our current reality while striving to reach best practices that will catapult student outcomes. I feel honored to work with him, learn from him, and improve as a result of navigating leadership with him." One other staff member said a lot about Jason, so I wanted to read it. "If Jason were to be any animal, he would be a lion. Lions are a symbol of strength and courage. They are powerful and fierce, but they also work together when it comes to defending their pride. They have incredible vision, helping them see what's coming and be proactive in planning for how they can best support their pride. These are all traits of Macklin. Like a lion, Jason is courageous and strong, never allowing fear to stand in the way of doing what's best for his kids. You'll often find him not only taking an alternative path, but also creating a new one that paves the way for each and every student to have access to opportunities they might not have ever dreamed of being a part of. He's collaborative, always seeking to build capacity of those around him and working with all stakeholders to move our campus forward. He has a keen ability to read people and foresee what is on the horizon, making him very proactive versus reactive. He's intentional and methodical, a great listener and supportive. In these challenging times, you'll often hear him reiterating to our staff, you can't pour from an empty cup, which aligns to his continuous efforts to meet staff where they're at and to do everything within his realm of control to ensure that they are in physical and mental spaces that allow them to do what's best for our kids. Jason is a true warrior for kids and staff alike. I appreciate the way he has pushed me to grow, support me, and strengthen my own identity as a leader, especially in a year like this one. So please help me in congratulating Jason for his quiet but strong leadership.
Woo, congratulations, Jason.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everyone. I'm rarely at a loss for words, but I don't know what to say. I attend all of these and I'm always excited to hear the great things people say about everyone else's leadership. I never imagined that I was having the impact that Kelly just shared. So I'm honored, I'm humbled, I'm grateful for my team. I have an amazing team, Jackie Scales, Lauren Hauser, Tanyetta Fields. It's not about me. I always wanted to read this quote, and I have a reason to now. Max Lucado said, "A man who wants to lead an orchestra must turn his back to the crowd." So it's not about me. I think it's all about our kids, and I have an amazing team that I trust, which is first and foremost, and I'm honored. So thank you again, Kelly Forrest. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, APS.
Thank you, Jason. Congratulations. Thanks, Kelly, for sharing all of that. And with that, we'll move to Larry to celebrate another one of our leaders.
All right, good morning, everyone. It was a tough choice because we have so many great leaders here in APS, and to choose one, it's definitely a challenge. So I did choose one, and I think the reason I chose this person is because they impacted me as well, and I've been in the district for a while, so seeing their leadership over years of service has been great to watch. I've been a colleague of this person. I've worked under this person. And now I've seen this person take a building and show their leadership in their own building. And this person's such a team player. He cares, he's a people person. He cares so much about the people he serves. He's a listener, he values others' input. And he's just a great person to connect with when you have challenges to go to. So this person is Craig Lyle at Columbia. And I'll take some time to kind of read some comments as well that his staff has said. I think that for me, the only thing that's changed by reading his comments at Columbia, because I've kind of distanced myself of not being close to him and as he's been at Columbia, but the only thing changed about Craig is he has no hair now. So, but other than that, he's still the same person and leading in the same way that he did when I was with him. So, man, what I don't like about working with Craig, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I have worked for a variety of different principals, and Craig is by far the best. He trusts his staff to be professionals, and he asks us questions that demonstrates the value he places on our experience and input. He is steady in the face of less than awesome circumstances, whether it is dealing with a frustrated staff member or handling a live stream that doesn't actually work. When Craig observes my class, I know I'll get both supportive and constructive feedback, and he is immensely approachable with both concerns and counsel for future career plans. I have recognized all of this about Craig since starting at Columbia, but this year of pandemic dictated education has brought his character and leadership traits more into focus for me, and I truly am thankful for his work. Another person said, Craig Lyle is a very definition of a great leader. He leads by example through his incredible character, dedication, and positive attitude. He genuinely cares about staff and always leads what is best for students first and foremost. Craig helped build Vista Peak from the ground up, and any successes they count him as one of their reasons. Anyone who has ever opened a school knows how incredibly challenged that can be, and he opened 2 in 2 years. I'm incredibly lucky to have been able to work with him, be mentored by him, and most importantly, call Craig a friend. I owe him more than I can say, and it is worth, without a doubt, that Aurora Public Schools is better because that of Craig Lyle as one of their leaders. When Craig became a principal of Columbia, I made it my goal to work there. Craig is the best leader I've ever worked for. His respect for all people and his genuine concern for his staff and students is inspirational. As challenging as 2021 has been, there is no place I would rather be than working at Columbia Middle School under Craig's leadership. And last but not least, one thing I appreciate about Craig's leadership is the willingness to entertain any idea from a staff member. It may not happen due to budget or schedule or mitigating factors, but it can bring most of the other ideas to him, and he'll think about them. And for our staff can come up with some of their things. He always makes us feel heard and valued. In addition, if someone does get put into place from a staff member, he always gives us credit. He's a true leader and he can never leave Columbia, ever. So that award goes to Craig Lyle.
Woo!
Congratulations. Woo!
All right. Thank you, Larry. It is much appreciated. I am honored. I've worked with and for some wonderful people here in APS. It's the only district I've ever worked for, and I'm honored to be in this group of leaders. Like Jason, I rely on good people, and we have a great team here at Columbia. Katie Law, Adam Hengen, Emily Lavery. I mean, they're tremendous. And so I'm honored. So thank you very much. And I do have to give a special shout out to my middle school peeps. They have kept me sane throughout this year, our text messages. So thank you, everyone. And I'm honored and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Jason and Craig. I just love hearing all of the staff views about our leaders, and we're so lucky here in APS to have so many great leaders throughout the district. So exciting to celebrate two of you today. With that, Yolanda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, what a
celebration.
great celebration this morning, Jason and Craig. Congratulations. And we just want to stay in that same vein of celebrating our amazing leaders of excellence. Most of you know, but we wanted just to take this opportunity with 306 people in the meeting to make sure that everybody knows that we have two new leaders for next school year, both of them internal folks here in APS, which we value as we continue to celebrate and encourage and develop our internal staff. And so Jenny Todd, principal of Laredo Elementary School, and of course, Maria Burdine, our new APS online K-8 program principal. So please, again, give it up for these two amazing folks. And Jenny and I just had to shout out that they are also participants of Lead in APS. Maria is one of our founding participants. She's participated since the get-go. Maria, I believe you are in cohort 1 with the Breakfast Club. You did a full 8 hours on a Saturday our first year. We'll never forget that over at Pickens. It was a great time. And then Jenny Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, cohort 3, Team Relentless, representing in the house this morning. So we are just so proud of both of you, and we are here to support you and make sure that you guys win, because when you win, our kids will win. So congrats again.
Congrats. So exciting to have new leaders. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next part of the day. Just want to do a quick reminder of the role that we're playing here in APS and the vision that we have for the work. So if you could just take a minute to ground yourself back in the vision of who we are. And then just reminder about our purpose. The purpose of Lead and Learn is we're creating time in the mornings to create some common understanding and some common language. And then we transfer into the afternoons where we have time to have some optional sessions where we're choosing based on our current context. And so we are getting ready to move into that time this morning. But the first thing we're going to do is we want to make sure that we're always starting our mornings off with taking care of ourselves and reminding ourselves of ways that we can help learn new strategies and take care of our staff. And so with that, this is our 5-minute time where you can either choose to do an in-person strategy. And we have Shauna Silverman who's going to do an in-person strategy with us. And if you choose to take this 5 minutes, you may also utilize the whole bingo board of strategies to go through and choose one of those, but we'd love for you guys to just take 5 minutes to ground yourself this morning in a wellness strategy before we move on to the rest of our day. And with that, I will turn it over to Shauna.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I am very appreciative to be here with you on this beautiful sunny morning. And as Jenny said, my name is Hannah Silverman, and I'm a sustainable wellness coach for the Central region. I guess, first of all, I'd like to invite you just to start off with some just brief movement, maybe gently lengthening the spine and rolling our shoulders, raising our arms up and out to the sides, keeping your palms up, squeezing those shoulder blades, and circling your arms and your wrists, bringing them down, slowly floating, and then maybe bringing your wrists in and shaking your arms. You can go ahead and mute and scream if you'd like. And now out again, palms up, and bringing our hands down as if they were floating, noticing any sensations that you're feeling in your body, any energy, pulsing, throbbing, maybe some tingling. So before we start a brief mindful breathing practice, I would like to invite you to turn on your gallery view of the screen and just take a quick scroll through and look and acknowledge your outstanding community of APS leaders. And even if people have their turned off their cameras or stepped away, we can take a moment to look at the names of the people on the screen. And although we may be in our own buildings and our own sites, we are a presence of interconnected leaders. So as a community of leaders, perhaps we can take a moment to extend a sense of kindness and connection to one another as we are all here together. And I'm going to assume that most people are still experiencing a rather high level of stress. So I'm going to lead you through a simple and brief mindful breathing practice. And the wonderful thing about breath is that generally it's usually an accessible resource, but we often forget this. And breath can bring us a sense of calming and caring for ourselves. However, it's worth noting that if it feels uncomfortable to focus on your breath, you can focus on the sensation of touch, like your body resting against a chair, or hugging your body, or placing a hand on your heart or on your leg, or just noticing your body swaying with the breath, or simply sitting and relaxing as a way to care for yourself. So I'd like to invite you for the next 5 minutes to find a comfortable sitting position for your body, or as comfortable as possible. If it feels right, allowing your eyes to close or drop and soften your gaze. Or keep your eyes open. Whatever you choose is fine. Arriving softly to the place that you are, and draw your attention inward, letting go of what came before and welcoming ourselves to this moment, and to bring some attention to yourself. Allowing yourself to sink into the support of the chair, or if you're standing, allowing your feet to sink into the floor. Perhaps sensing the contact with the chair. Really allowing yourself to notice the exact temperatures and textures of that support. And where in the body do you feel the contact? Perhaps your back, your hips, your legs, your feet. Really feel your feet making contact with the floor as though they are rooted in the earth. And as you bring more attention to your body, I invite you to bring along a sense of kindness to yourself. The best way to do this is just allowing yourself to be exactly as you are. There's nothing to change. There's nothing to fix. Nothing to make good or bad your experience, or need to judge how you are experiencing life right now. Just allowing yourself this space to be how you are. I invite you to gently notice the sensation of breathing within your body. Feeling the body breathe in, feeling the body breathe out. Perhaps noticing how your body is nourished on the in-breath and how it softens and relaxes on the out-breath. There is nothing else that needs doing in this moment. Slowing down and letting go. There is no need to strive. Just taking one breath at a time. Taking a slow, nourishing breath in and extending the exhale out just a little longer. Now, in this soft space that you've created for yourself, let your breath be easy and natural, giving yourself 5 breath cycles with a soft inhale and a gentle exhale, like waves on the sea, or swaying in and swaying out. Just being rocked by the rhythm of your breathing. Now, slowly letting go of the practice and bringing your awareness back to the room where you are at your own pace. I invite you to open your eyes and take a moment to see how that experience landed for you. Perhaps you can use this exercise as a way to set an intention to use your breath to support you during the day today, or carry it forward and encourage others to do the same. And finally, I would like to express my appreciation for all of you and your dedicated work May you all be safe and well, and may our students thrive, be nourished, and cared for by the education we provide. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for guiding us through that strategy this morning. I know that we'll all be able to use it in some way or another at schools or at work or in our personal lives. So thanks so much for being with us this morning.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. Okay, and so I'm just going to bring us back to just a couple of reminders before we get started this morning. Oh my gosh. Please, please make sure that you complete surveys both in this morning session and any of the other sessions that you attend during the day, because that is how you get credit for all of the sessions that you attend. Just know that all of the sessions will be archived on the playbook, on the remote learning and on the remote learning page website, so that you can access them. So if you go to one and there's a conflict, another one you wanted to go to, you can always access it later on the playbook on the very front page of this exact slide deck that we're using right now. And then all sessions this morning start at 9:30. And so we're going to transition into that in just a moment, but they start at 9:30, they go till 3. Those are all choice sessions. There is actually no 3 to 4 session this afternoon. So we're giving you the gift of time during that time to go back and do whatever you need to do at your schools or in your offices to support the learning for students. Just a reminder too about our virtual agreements. If you could just take one moment to ground yourself in those agreements as you begin your transition this morning, that would be great. And at this point, we actually are going to transition. We won't come back to this group, but know that all of your session links are in the calendar invites as well as in the agenda. And our first sessions start at 9:30, which is 3 minutes from now. So if everybody could try to be in there by 9:30, that'd be great. But I think that our facilitators will probably be able to give a minute or two grace period just because we are ending a little bit late this morning. And so with that, I'll say thanks for being a part of our morning session, and we'll look forward to seeing you in all the sessions throughout the day. Have a great day of learning.